Hey, Monday afternoon, and we've got breaking news. The 49ers, in a deal that had been rumored for years, connected to the Niners for years, have signed Sam Darnold to a one-year contract, John.
Yeah, I mean, he will now enter the offseason, right, with Trey Lance, and getting a lot of reps is the opportunity to battle for the backup quarterback of the 49ers, assuming that everything goes along with Brock's elbow injury. That, as someone I saw on the Twitter.com that Steve Wilks, Christian McCaffrey, and Sam Darnold, they got the Panthers band back together.
Wow. Well, McCaffrey worked out great, and Wilkes, people are pretty excited about. And I'm not being funny here. If you're battling with Trey Lance, up until Brock is healthy, it's actually the starting quarterback for the 49ers, right? Like if you're the number one quarterback for the Niners in July, that's not including Brock. If you're the backup, you could be the third. So the question here, there's a bunch of questions. One is, if Brock's healthy, these guys are his backups, unless Trey Lance can make up ground on Brock Purdy. And if not, is Trey Lance better than Sam Darnold? And is Sam Darnold the second best quarterback on the 49ers or the number 3 quarterback on the 49ers? Now, if you're Sam, you might say, don't matter. Last year, the Niners got down to their 4th quarterback, kind of. So whatever I am, I will play on this team, right? You could look at it that simply. You could look at it like, hey, this is a good play. This is a good situation. This coach, the players, all that. But you could argue it doesn't matter. But as we all know, quarterback depth chart really matters. So that's part of the question with Trey Lance now. Not just
it's weird, right? Sam Darnold falls under this category of he's a bust, given that he was the number 3 overall pick, and going into his 4th year, he was traded. So he played his 4th and 5th year for the Panthers, and even last year, remember, got beat out by Baker Mayfield. So his career, when he was drafted really high, obviously he's played. I mean, he has 55 career starts. So he has played a lot for a guy whose career now, when you get drafted 3rd overall and going into your 6th season, you're on your 3rd team. Like there's different level of busts, but it did not go well for him in his career, right? To ultimately lead to signing a 1-year deal. Now, that being said, independent of the definition kind of his career, I think he's a fantastic upside younger player that is a backup level quarterback who has a ton of starting experience. The name I've been throwing out constantly has been Darnold. And I think a lot of guys fall under that umbrella. There have been rumors about Baker Mayfield. Whoever they sign, to me, in this role of, going to go in the offseason and compete with Trey Lance. Now, Trey Lance, when you go to OTA practice, is going to probably get the first rep as the starter, and this guy goes to the second. But there had to be some level of, this guy knows what he's doing. He's a professional, and that's what you're getting. For a guy with 55 career NFL starts, like that's a really big deal, and been in the pressure cooker. But he's also young. Like ultimately, my Dalton's mid-30s, right? We know what Dalton is. I think we've seen guys like this. Is there something there? This is a player that I think the 49ers have been interested in for years. It just didn't work out. And now they have 2 guys, one now a defensive coordinator. And I would say Christian McCaffrey is a unique player, like would probably be one that Kyle shoots text to and asks some questions about specific things if he thinks he has knowledge.
Yeah.
That the person, we talked, about Hargrave, the person matters a lot to the 49ers. And I think Dalton fall under that category. Ultimately, Baker probably doesn't. A lot of backup quarterbacks typically fall under that category, right? The Chad Henne, the McCown forever, like Colt McCoy. You need to get a high-level guy because this guy could end up starting games for you or be your 3rd quarterback. And, you need a mentally focused / mature human being to handle that kind of roller coaster of potential outcomes.
Yeah, and you need some humility, right? You need a guy, if your situation is, hey, we are not signing you to be the starting quarterback, then you need a guy that understands his job, while coaches always say we want you to compete, is not to come in and take Brock Purdy or Trey Lance's job. It is to help Brock Purdy or Trey Lance, right? In the way that Trey Lance helped Brock at the end of the year last year, right? That is the job. Part of it is, and if you get to the point where you have a veteran quarterback, I remember hearing a couple of years ago about a veteran quarterback, he got to choose whether or not they would bring the third QB up on the active roster on game day because the third quarterback actually helped him more in game than the backup quarterback did. Backup quarterback was a little more selfish. Third string quarterback actually was a guy that helped him. So, I mean, if you're the 49ers and you have Brock, brand new starter, Trey early in his development, you need whoever the other guy is, in this case, Sam, to be a good teammate, to help them, to help coach them if that's what's asked of him, right? Sam's making the same money whether he's the starter or the third. So you're paying him to help you on game day one way or the other. And I'm with you. I mean, he's 25. He doesn't turn 26 until June. He's not durable historically, which is a problem for the 49ers.
Fits right
in the worst way. They have an injury-riddled QB room, 27.
I'd have to look around.
Yeah.
We'd have to go like through every team. And obviously there are fluid situations in the NFL. This has to be one of the most unique rooms of all time, right? And definitely in the league currently. 2 third overall picks, but not just third overall picks. Remember the Jets traded with the Colts, like 4 second rounders to move from 6 to 3 to draft him. Obviously Trey is well established. And as Field Yates just tweeted, that both these two guys, third overall picks, are backing up Mr. Irrelevant if he's healthy. So the group and all guys would fall under the umbrella as Purdy came into the league having to make the team and then be the third string guy and then turned into the backup to the starter. Lance has been the backup last year, truly as the backup, then was named the starter, then got injured. And once Jimmy got injured, played this role that we found out at the end of the season that was very conducive to helping Purdy. Remember, like standing on the sideline, being with Purdy, signals and helping him coming off the field. So all of them have kind of seen a lot Sam's been in the league the longest, but pretty unique careers if you kind of had them all together,
Sam has been through 15 years of football before the age of 26. When you think of, he didn't just get drafted high. He got drafted high by one of the historically most dysfunctional franchises in recent NFL history, the Jets. Then he gets traded, like you said, even though his stock had plummeted, he gets traded for a second, a fourth, and a sixth, I think was the trade 2 years ago. So he doesn't
had his 5th-year option picked up that offseason by the Panthers, remember?
That's right. So it's not like he shows up with no pressure, shows up with a ton of pressure.
Doesn't go well. And
now here he is on the 49ers. And again,
think about this guy. It doesn't go well, but they have his 5th-year option, so he comes back on the team. What do they do that offseason? They trade for Baker Mayfield. There's a quarterback competition, kinda. He's not named the starter. Baker Mayfield beats him out. Then something happens. He obviously gets injured, but he was traded to a place, named the starter. They underachieve. He comes back. They add Baker Mayfield. He gets relegated to the backup. It's been a roller coaster. He's very, very young because wasn't one of the things at USC, he came out as a redshirt sophomore.
Right.
So he entered the league at 20 years old, 21 years old. So you are getting a guy who feels more like he's 28, 29, and who's 25 years old, which I like. And I think it's pretty easy in your mind to go, he's Matt Rule. That thing fucking flamed out, and the Jets. So
yeah. When he got traded to Carolina, he was the same age that Brock Purdy is now. 23.
What's Purdy? Yeah.
When he got when his Jets career
we'll be 26 this summer.
Yeah, he'll be 26. But still, I mean that's prime. That's your prime. He should be in his prime right now, quarterback prime. Now the question is he has not been an accurate passer. He's not really, as I said, I don't know that he's made it through a season healthy. I don't know if you have his full number of games in front. I'm looking at his injury.
Never started a full season.
17 ankle injury. He got mono, sprained foot in 18, mono in 19, sprained shoulder in 20, some other random shoulder injury that year, concussion, shoulder crack in 21, 22 preseason injury. He's been hurt every year.
He's been the full-time starter 18, 19, 20, 21. He started 13, 12, and 11. And then obviously this year he started 6, but he wasn't the starting quarterback to begin the season. and he was injured as the backup. So, but when he's been the full-time starter going into the season, 13, 13, 12, 11. So he fits the Niners to a T. Now, part of, why they have access to this player is because of all these things, right? You got to factor it all in. The inaccuracy, the injuries, the struggles, we're here for a reason. But this is, it's either an older backup quarterback or kind of a young flyer on a guy, which they do have pretty good inside information on. Wilkes has been there a while, right?
Yeah.
And McCaffrey was there the whole time with Sam, right?
Yes.
Which character in this locker room means a lot. And honestly, McCaffrey probably knows even better, given that he played with all the guys, knows the type of people that they like. And I would be stunned if Christian McCaffrey, Sam Darnold, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, little Quattro had communication, right? Like them asking Christian what he thought about him. Do you agree?
I 100% agree. Yep. I think you're right about that. I wonder if did they do any work on him in the draft in 2018? They do any work on the quarterbacks that year?
Well, that was McGlinchey's year, right?
Yeah, that was McGlinchey's year.
Feels like they bypassed. Well, they had just signed Jimmy. Where I think they did a lot of their work was 2 years ago when they traded for Trey.
Or the trade.
That, pretty sure this show was kind of pounding the table. Like that would be 2.
Yeah, we were pro Darnold at the time. We were also pro trade. I mean, he played at USC, so you watch. It's hard not to watch him because you watch a bunch of USC players.
Well, who likes USC players more than Adam and John?
And USC had good defensive players that year that came out in the draft. Uchenna Nwosu was a second rounder. Rasheem Green, the Seahawks drafted him in the 3rd round. So you definitely would have watched them.
He played with Juju, right?
Play with Juju. That was the rap. And I remember, I think maybe you've mentioned this, but I know some I've heard that people just felt like coming out. It just, it was that Darnold is kind of a cautionary tale of when a guy plays with the level of receivers he played with at SC. And obviously this is not some new story, but there was a lot of just kind of backyard ball, throw it up to the best players on the field, make something happen, as opposed to, reading the defense and 1, 2, 3, 4, making the kinds of decisions that translate to the NFL.
Well, I think that's the question on a higher level. But I mean, both these guys got drafted right around where Tua got drafted 5, and CJ Stroud's bound to go in the top 5. And those guys even had better receivers. It is hard to evaluate sometimes, right? When your receivers are like NFL starters, not one guy, but like 3 of them, it ain't a fair fight. We have a huge advantage. I remember Dan Jeremiah loved him and kind of did the comparisons of Russell Wilson. Like remember in college, he was such an instinctive kind of playmaker.
Yep.
And one thing, just texting with a buddy right now who just, the one knock on him has always been, and it goes back to that Belichick Monday night game I'm seeing ghosts, is unless you're an elite athlete, and I don't know if Russell Wilson's an elite athlete, but he was damn good. Your playmaking run around, the NFL's not as much about that. It's an element to the game. Like even Purdy brings that to the table, but the majority of your passes are going to be like 1, 2, 3, let it rip. This guy's not open, go to my second. It is a upstairs game. If you're not Kyler and it's like, well, no one's going to catch me, so I can run, or Deshaun Watson. I don't think Sam's quite that. He's a 4.85 40 guy. And his 10-yard split is, a tenth of a second slower than Purdy's. So for a guy that was viewed as a really good athlete in college, actually relative to the NFL, not as great. So you do have to win within the pocket. And someone texting saying that like the one good part is for this scheme, there is a lot of just play action, dump it down, quick screens to Debo and Ayuk, Kittle down the seam.
Yeah.
Why Purdy became really good is because he could do all that. And then it felt like he could do that next level of stuff. But if you can just do kind of the basic stuff, there's enough talent around you where you can just function and compete to win games for a short period of time. Now, you can't win the Super Bowl like that, right? But you could. The team is good enough to function for a small period of time if that is a limitation that he can never improve.
Somebody in the chat said, false, go watch the tape. He stood in like a boss. He Darnold's second year, his first year starting, his true, I guess it was his redshirt freshman year because he redshirted, was the year that it was one of those where it was better that year than the next year. His first year was 67% completion, 31 touchdowns, 9 picks, 67%, 31 touchdowns, 9 picks, only 3,000 yards. He threw for more yards the next year. Juju was gone, but he was 63% that year, 26 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, which, 63%, 26 touchdowns, 13 picks from a major conference school that doesn't scream top 3 pick, right? When you play
his first year starting was better than his second year starting.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that second year, 63%, 26 touchdowns, 13 picks. That doesn't scream top 3 pick.
No, I mean, Juju, I'm just looking at Juju's college numbers. I guess
16 was the year with Darnold.
Yeah, 70 catches, 10 touchdowns. Juju in college is just a guy that probably adds a couple percentages to, you can be a little inaccurate because he had a wide catching radius.
Yeah.
To me, he was like a Crabtree-ish, just not the fastest guy, but physical, could make plays, just kind of put it up around him. I just remember watching him. I loved him in college, but I like Sam in college because might have been the bar had been dropped a little bit with the way we viewed SC, and it felt like he kind of invigorated the program back to, I don't want to say prominence, but definitely relevancy. It wasn't one of the knocks is that Clay waited too long to go to him.
Yeah,
he didn't start.
15 was the year
they played Alabama to start the season, right?
No. That was his redshirt year. The next year was 16. That was the year they played Alabama, and he did not start that game. I think they started Max Brown.
They did
at AT&T, and they got his oust. You know who started for Alabama that day?
Jalen Hurts.
6 of 11 passing.
He was under the Jimmy Garoppolo operation. What was the final score of that game? Like 50-0?
52-6.
He threw 11 passes in the game as the starting quarterback.
Because then they went to Blake Barnett, who went 5 of 6, and then Cooper Bateman threw a pass. Bo Scarborough. Damian Harris was 138 yards. Hurts ran the ball 9 times for 32 yards. Some guy named Josh Jacobs got 4 carries in that game.
Heard he's decent.
Calvin Ridley had 2 catches in the game. O.J. Howard had 3 catches in the game. Minka Fitzpatrick had 6 tackles and 2 PBUs. Jonathan Allen had 2 sacks. Reuben Foster had a TFL. Marlon Humphrey had a TFL.
Probably wasn't the fairest fight,
My God, man, these Alabama teams are just ridiculous.
I feel like, they're still dominant, but you look back on some of them, you're like, God damn, his first 10 years, it wasn't fair once he got rolling.
Yeah.
It's become more equitable around the college landscape than those right around 16, 17, it feels like started spreading a little.
John, I'll say right now, I think we're looking at the Niners' 3rd string quarterback. One thing people are saying, though, does this mean Trey could get traded?
I would say if Brock Purdy was 100% healthy, it would be on the table. I would say with his injury and just complete unknown, it doesn't behoove the 49ers, given that his contract was fully guaranteed. So they're not saving any money, right? Like Trey got the $25 million bonus when he was the 3rd pick. He's on your squad. Unlike when the Jets traded Sam Darnold, because similar type deal a little bit, is they had just drafted Zach Wilson. There was a tangible, we're going in on this young guy, even though that's not like that had worked out. I think there are variables working in Trey's beside, regardless how they feel about him, that it doesn't make any sense to not just, you like the guy, he fits in well. I would say clearly it feels like he impressed everyone the way he handled Purdy. That goes a long way for a guy that, is no longer the starting quarterback. I also think from a football standpoint, isn't it very healthy to bring in a guy that just makes it real? Last year, one of the knocks, right, I think looking back, is there was just no competition. They handed a guy a job that just didn't deserve to have his job handed to him. And we had talked about how that was going to change for sure until Purdy even became a human. But I would say this just adds competition, which is something that I think was sorely needed last year that didn't exist. And now you have that. And that's always
because
talk
Brock
to a
was not
million
really
coaches.
given. It didn't
No,
matter.
he
with Brock.
wasn't even the second string quarterback.
Yeah.
Sudfeld couldn't move. Was Josh Rosen around last year? Was that 2 years ago? It's like, what were we doing?
I thought Rosen was that early last year that we saw some Rosen?
Yeah, I think Josh made a cameo.
Years kind of blend together.
So there's no reason to trade him. Just let him compete. Like that to me is the healthiest thing. Let the guy compete. It's what he needs. Like everyone's on different paths. Like Nick Bosa, see you training camp, buddy, or mandatory OTAs. You know, we trust you. You do your thing. Trent Williams, same thing. Ayuk, we know you like training around here. See you practice. The Niners have a unique kind of setup because they have all these star players. Like Debo, probably not expecting to see him till that mandatory week. You know, you might see some videos of him, you know, weight fluctuating. It is what it is. I know when the season starts, he'll be ready to rock and roll. This is a situation of like, this to me is probably the most interesting offseason thing, right? Because the Niners are a unique offseason. It's like, what's McCaffrey like? You know, working on his body fat and his hamstring.
Is his calf okay? When we get to September 10, is McCaffrey's calf good? That's the question.
This is by far. Because even like in OTAs, whoever's rotating at right tackle, what are you even figuring out? Maybe Drake Jackson's weight, his strength, but this is a tangible thing of the Excel spreadsheet of these two completion percentages.
Yeah.
And Brock
throwing behind the grandstand.
Yeah. They're not trying to hide him this time, so he could be probably anywhere in the region.
You don't think so?
Wouldn't shock me if he does a little throwing and then he comes over with Kyle, like during the team periods. I could see it's probably going to, you know, Jimmy was like, get out of here. Get your chicken sandwich and leave.
Right. Brock's got to come over and make sure everyone knows. Still the starter.
Yeah, I could see them integrating,
Help
like,
Trey out
does he throw before practice so no one's totally judging him, and then he's with Kyle in the offense during practice?
Yeah. Will anybody come out and run routes for him?
Yeah.
Or will it be that
I'll be stunned if he's not standing around when like the team stuff's going with the quarterbacks.